Welcome to HomeFront Sitrep with Willis.
And Megs. Don't forget about Blaze.
We're just a couple of veterans having a good time talking about what's on our minds.
And maybe yours.
You can find us on Apple, Amazon, or Spotify.
Or wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
Welcome, everybody, to another exciting episode of HomeFront Sitrep. How is everybody doing tonight?
I'm hanging in, a little tired. I had a little adventure right before I got here.
Cattle dogs are fast, man.
Oh, yeah. So those of you that don't know, I rescued a cattle dog about a year ago. Blue heeler, however you want to call them. But I've got some neighbors moving in behind me. And I know that there was like a hole in the fence, but he hasn't really gone through it. And he decided to dart for it. There was too much activity.
Oh, man. He's like, freedom!
Yeah, protect the perimeter!
So like William Wallace, he's like, gone.
Yeah.
Sweet.
But got him back. Everything's fine. So we're all good now. So.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad you got him back because, he's a very highly energetic dog. Let me tell you, very highly energetic.
But then when he's a lover, he's a lover. Like, talk about flop on your lap and like.
I do that too.
Yeah, no.
Oh, it's so sweet. Anyway, I'm excited, man. We got a special guest today, Samuel Deeds. You're going to learn about his story. He sent us his bio, and it was like a miniature book. He could probably publish it if he wanted to.
And apparently that's the miniature version.
That's the miniature version, yeah.
That's the Cliff Books.
So he helps with Kentucky, I think it's Kentucky Wounded Heroes. He's also part of a professional skydiving team where they dive into stadiums for sports events. So we're going to bring Samuel Deeds up here on the screen and introduce him. Welcome, Samuel Deeds. How are you, sir?
Doing well. How are you?
Man, I'm doing all right. Man, I'm so glad we reconnected after many years apart there. For people that are listening, they don't really know the backstory, but Sam was my boot camp battle buddy. Anytime he got in trouble, I was on the quarterdeck. Anytime I got in trouble, he was on the quarterdeck. So I've known Sam for, God, that was what, 97?
Yeah.
But anyway, we lost contact after I left.
Why do you have so much gray and he doesn't?
Well, I got more hair than he does. He said
he's doing the whole let me shave it off.
Yeah. We lost contact, and then we eventually here recently within the last 6-7 months reconnected, and I've found out some of the things that's been going on with his life, and I figured he'd be a good episode for the podcast with the things that he's doing for veterans. As you can tell, he's still moto as hell. Look at his back wall there. So Sam, tell us a little bit about your story, and we'll go from there.
Oh, and any little thing you want to share about Willis is please add. Just do it.
Yeah, we'll leave all that out.
Yeah, we'll leave that out, Sam. Thank you. That's awesome.
So I'm originally from a small town in Maine, Howland, Maine. It's about 38 miles north of Bangor. So geographically, it's almost dead center in the state. Obviously, I don't have that New England accent anymore after living in Kentucky and in the South for as long as I did. Spent 3 years in Camp Lejeune and then re-enlisted and ended up in Kentucky on recruiting duty. Met my wife here and her whole family's here, and then back to North Carolina. And then in 2005, about 30-something days into our first deployment over there, I got hit with an IED. Ended up sending one of my Marines home. Injuries. He's still with us today. I was able to stay in country, and then 30 days later, I got hit with a second IED, and that one overly sent me home. So I think we were 67, 68 days in country. Suffered a 1/3 open tibia fracture, multiple shrapnel wounds to my upper and lower left thigh. Had a piece go in my right groin, broke 2 metacarpals in my left hand, shrapnel to my right hand, my left forearm, and I got a piece in my head here. So, no one can explain to me how that got in there. So maybe it went in and just moved around a little bit and worked its way up to the top. Was able to stay in the Marine Corps. Unfortunately, I had to leave the infantry and went and worked with the V-22 for 5 years. And, in the infantry, we always joked about swinging with the wing and how easy they have it. Man, how wrong was I? You go over there and you actually work your butt. Well, they did. I didn't. I got pulled out of the shop for stressing the Marines out. I was told that they're working on an $83 million aircraft and they needed to have a less stressful environment. So I got pulled up and worked directly for the Sergeant Major for 5 years. And then after my 30-something surgery, the Navy and the Marine Corps found that I was as healthy as I was ever going to be. And I was medically retired after 14 years and change. But what Willis didn't tell you is him and I actually served together too in 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines after boot camp. So it was boot camp. It was the School of Infantry. It was 2-8. And then I guess it was about the year 3.5, I guess, is when we both went our separate ways there. And that was the last time we talked until about 5 or 6 months ago.
Yeah, because I went to 1-8 Bravo Company go on a med float because 2-8 was going to do a CAX, and I wanted to go on a med float before I actually EAS. So I extended.
All right, alphabet soup, you guys. Let's
Okay.
all right, break it down. Break it down. All
So
right.
EAS is get out for you non-military people. But no, so yeah, I went over to 1-8 Bravo Company and went on a med float with them, and then Sam went on his way. And like I said, during boot camp, we were really close friends. We got to know each other. School of Infantry, we got to know each other more. And then when we went to the same unit together, so we got to hang out quite a bit. And he was, for some reason, we clicked. And Sam can probably agree with this. We just clicked for some reason. He was from the north, I was from the south, and it was like opposites attract for some reason. But
it's like us. Aww.
But yeah, Sam was always one of my good friends during that time. And then when we lost, of course, back then, Facebook and cell phones like we have now were not a thing. And then we recently reconnected on Facebook, and I'm kind of thankful for that because, like I said, Sam was always one of my good friends. And hearing his story, what happened to him after we went our own ways, is one of the reasons why I wanted to bring him on here. And because if you follow him on Facebook and you see all the stuff that he's doing for veterans and with veterans, being a wounded veteran himself, like you were just recently up in Alaska doing some fishing.
Oh, yes.
That's badass.
Yeah, that's badass, man. Now, what organization was that through?
That was with Patriot Healing Adventures. It's a small nonprofit out of northern New Jersey, New York area. They send about 4 veterans a year to Alaska. So it was, we flew into Ketchikan, which is the salmon capital of the world. So it's down on that little panhandle closer to Canada. And then from there, we went to Klawock, which is on Prince William Island, I think.
Okay.
And then from Klawock, it was an hour and change to Kaufman Cove. And we stayed at the Bear's Den at Kaufman Cove. And the entire trip was a self-guided trip. So it was myself and 3 other veterans. I didn't know the other 3. They didn't know me. 2 of the veterans that were up there served together in the Navy. And then one of those guys and the other veteran worked together up in Maine, of all places. But all 4 of us, ironically, have connections to Maine. 2 of them live there now. One of them, his father-in-law or his wife, is from Bangor. And, of course, me being from Holland. But it was the first couple of days was a struggle because, being a self-guided lodge, they can only give you so much information per Alaskan guidelines and rules and regulations. So trying to figure out how far back to put the flasher, how deep we need to put the flasher, how fast we need to go for the salmon. And then it was, where are we going for these halibut? And, there's holes everywhere and all the holes are named for one reason or another. And all the locals know all the holes. So you get there and there's 8 or 10 boats on this hole that might be, 50 by 50. So you're like trying to squeeze in there and you got to find your own spot. And One day it was extremely foggy. I mean, I couldn't even see 10 feet in front of the boat going less than a mile an hour. We turned around, came back, and one of the veterans was like, let's try that 180 hole right there. He was looking over my shoulder at the screen. I'm like, give it a shot. And we get over there, and I landed a monster halibut. I mean, I say monster. It was probably 50, 60 pounds. It was put up a big fight.
That's still a monster, bro.
Yeah.
It is, but we got back to the dock, and there was one there that was 2-3 times that size on the dock, just laying there waiting to get filleted out. And I'm like, really?
I mean,
had a big fish. And
if it's the first one you ever caught in your life, 50, 60 pounds puts up a hell of a fight.
It didn't until it got from that dark water to the light. And once it hit that light, it just dove right back to the bottom. And I knew it was a big fish because when that thing hit the bottom, I felt it all the way up through the rod. So I just tried to keep positive pressure on it. And there's a good video on my Facebook of us landing that thing. And
don't send me to the light.
A little bit of panic sets in on my behalf. And I told one of the veterans, just hit that. And he's like, I'm trying. I was like, just get him in the boat, man. But no, it was a good trip. And, all 4 of us clicked pretty much right away because I didn't meet him until we got to Seattle on one of our connecting flights. And, the 4 of us, by Friday, we had the locals asking us, where are you catching these halibut? We want to know. So you're doing something right.
Something right.
Yeah, when the locals.
The people that are up there 90% of the year asking you where you're fishing. So it was a success or failure was on us. And we ended up leaving there, I think, a huge success. We had 70, 75 pounds of fish each coming home. Plus we left fish in Alaska. So it was a good trip.
You got to bring fish home with you?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. The organization sent us each a check for any expenses we may have had, like the dinner the night before, dinner on the way home, any of our over baggage, the lodge individually packed and froze the fish. And then we boxed it up the morning we came home. You get it back into Catch a Can. They throw it in the freezer to your flight and it comes home with you on your plane. So when I got home, all my fish was still frozen. So
that's awesome.
I've got a freezer full now, so I'm good for the winter.
There you go. That's all that matters. Yeah.
And, you mentioned Kentucky Wounded Heroes earlier, and that's one of the trips that they do. That's their biggest trip of the year. And I've been up there probably 3 times with them. I went up once as a wounded hero. And then after that trip, I got invited on to be staff. So I've gone up twice as a staff member to help the other veterans that are going up and first responders. So Kentucky Wounded Heroes isn't just wounded veterans. So it's Purple Heart recipients, anybody that has a 50% or greater rating with the VA, and first responders that were injured in the line of duty. So it's, they took a little bit different approach than a lot of these other nonprofits because, and some of the greatest guys I've met are those first responders because they don't have anything, right? Even within their own little network, it's hard when you know that your buddy got injured, because you could be in that same situation. I mean, they see it every day, as veterans, when you go to a live fire range, there's the possibility something's going to happen. And, you and I experienced that early on in 2-8. We had a guy that had his finger on the trigger of his saw and went down and ended up shooting the guy in front of him. He ended up dying on the range. So,
I had a drill sergeant that was actually killed while I was at basic at OSUT. Similar kind of thing. Somebody slipped and then it went down. And
we were in a line formation and we were lead bound, and then somehow the guy kind of crossed over in front and the guy behind slipped and fell, had his finger on the trigger, which, as any good Marine will tell you, you're not supposed to do that. But unfortunately, he had his finger on the trigger, and the guy wound up, I can't remember if he wound up dying, but I know he got shot, and that brings back memories because that was God.
Yeah, the drill sergeant, one was doing Overwatch shoot from the tower, doing the tracers, and it was basically just to get us recruits kind of all riled up and stuff like that. And then something about the tripod that he was using, or the bipod that he was using, something slipped, and so then the barrel of the gun went down while he was still, and it basically ate that drill sergeant up, and that was it. So that happened when I was in OSIT at Fort Leonard Wood. So it's crazy. But I have a cool question for you. With some of these retreats and stuff that you're talking about, some of these organizations, are they men only? Because I have to ask that.
No.
Okay.
So, last year, Patriot Healing Adventures sent a group of 4 women up there to fish, and they were having a struggle fest. None of them had really operated a boat before. None of them had really truly fished before. So they ended up getting them a guide for their time up there, and they killed the fish. I mean, they absolutely hammered the fish. I mean, you're allowed 6 coho, which is your silver salmon. You're allowed, I think, 5 chum, which is another salmon. And then I think it's 1 king or 2 king. And then your 6 pinks. So as an individual, you can put 20 fish on the deck a day.
Wow.
Except for the king. I think the king's limited to like 1 per year or 2 per year, whatever that season may be. But you're looking at 18 fish a day per person, and there's 4 of them. I think they ended up like 42 fish on the deck one day.
Holy cow.
Yeah, so it was a good time. And then Kentucky Wounded Heroes, we do have a lot of women that get involved. One of the people that went this year to Alaska was a EMT who was injured on the line of duty. And her and one of our staff members, who's a female, went up just so they could share a room. And so she had another female there. But
that's awesome.
It's a little bit harder to get some of the females to come out. I don't know why. Maybe they don't feel as though, I don't know, they're not deserving of it. But, I tell people all the time, you put your name on that dotted line, that solid line, whatever. You don't get to pick and choose when or if something's going to break out. You don't get to pick and choose if your unit's going to deploy you or not. There are certain circumstances where you can go to another unit and deploy like Willis did. But, for the most part, you don't get to choose. You're at the needs of whatever branch of service you're in. So, but to answer your question, no. Even Blue Skies for the Good Guys and Gals Warrior Foundation, which is the skydive team's nonprofit, we include the females too. So there's no, and Kentucky Wounded Heroes and Blue Sky, it's every era. Yeah. So it's not just post 9/11.
That was going to be my next question. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just post 9/11. It's everybody who has served and has that rating or Purple Heart or was injured in line of duty first responder for Kentucky Wounded Heroes.
Yeah, I just know as a female and who's looked into some of these different organizations, I think sometimes we give up because we continually get told oh, this is for the men, or oh, this, that, or the other reason. And so we go back to being the women that we are, and we're like, fuck it, we'll take care of ourselves. But we need help. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And then, and so I want more women to be able to have more opportunities and more adventures. So that's why I try to always ask that question. So anybody that may be listening, any female that may be listening, to know that these are organizations that are accepting of you as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few other ones that are out there too that are semi-ish local. I know I went on Patriot Catfish down in Alabama, and we had a bunch of women out there, that were there that weekend. And Walleyes for Wounded Heroes includes women too, and most of them are limited to the number of women just because of living space. Right. So if you don't get 4 women that apply for an event, and that's what the cabin space is, it's hard because you don't want to mix the men and the women, the legalities of it from the nonprofit's point of view and from the lawyers and everybody else.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, there's a bunch that are, I don't know, 2 or 3 hour drive from central Kentucky, 5-hour drive.
That's also one of those things where if we put it out there, like, all right, hey, let's a few of us band together.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, let's make this happen. If we just know what needs to happen to make it happen. Yeah.
Well, that's
as
like
Willis says, make it happen, Captain.
Yeah. Well, that's like our camping trip that we had at Camp Hero. It was me, Megan, Michelle, and Doc. So 2 on 2. And if you've been to the Rocco's cabin there, it's only got 6 racks, and then it's got the big couch, air mattress, and we made it work. Just because there was only 4 of us, we made it work. 1 bathroom, we made it work the whole time we were there. And we've been involved in several different 501c3s for veterans out there, and some of them I enjoyed, some of them did me wrong, which I'm not going to get into that. But never heard of Kentucky Wounded Heroes until recently, within the last 4 months or so we heard about them, and we heard about it from Rocco, which Rocco.
Yep.
And he was telling us about it, so I started looking into it. And then when me and you reconnected, and you told me I saw some of your posts where you were working with them, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I need to figure out more about this organization. And then plus you do skydiving into stadiums with flags, dude. That's freaking amazing, man. How did you get hooked up with that job?
Yeah, I don't jump. I've got some shrapnel near my femoral still, and that's where the harness rides. And even though it's a different type of scar tissue, there's still that chance, too many hard openings, that the shrapnel could get pushed out of the scar tissue and into the femoral. So I do a lot of the ground safety work. So basically, I do all the heavy lifting, if you will. We're
the
on
grunt work.
The ground safety's on site an hour to 3 hours, 4 hours prior to the jump. The jump can last anywhere from 4 to 6 minutes, depending on the altitude that the jumper's getting out from. And then, helping pick up the gear and get the gear off the field and everything, so whoever, whether we were just down in Memphis for the Memphis Navy game. We've got, a bunch of stuff coming up, heading out to Albuquerque for the Balloon Fiesta. We've got 10 jumps out there over a week time period. I guess a week and a half time period. But we do, it's more than just the stadiums. We do NASCAR and IndyCar, and we've done birthday parties where one of the guys had to dress up in a suit and tie and jump in this, a bottle of tequila or a bottle of whiskey or whatever in the bag. And, it's just a lot of stuff. And we do a lot of charity stuff too. It's, we got the Mogadishu Mile coming up. A friend of mine and I are co-hosting that out in Queens Lake in Georgetown, and the team's scheduled to jump in, and weather dependent, obviously.
Right.
We just did the Louisville Cardinals. One of my guys jumped in as the Cardinal, as the Dirty Bird.
Nice.
So, it was pretty neat. We've been trying that one for a couple of years and kept getting weathered out, and finally, 5th time was a charm on that one. It made it happen a couple of weeks ago. But
that's awesome.
But so there was a Gold Star father of a guy that I served with. I picked him up from the School of Infantry in 2004 after I came back from recruiting duty, and then redeployed back to Haiti with 3rd Battalion, 8th Marines. And I was injured in March. Taylor was killed in May 26th or May 29th of that same year. And then after I got out and moved back to Northern Kentucky with my wife, I met his dad, and we've just become really good friends. And he was told me about the skydive team, and that they had this event coming up. The first year was Warrior Weekend. Remember, the first year was 27 Purple Heart recipients, and Mr. Brzezinski as the only Gold Star family member. And while we were out at the range, one of the ranges was dedicated to a fallen Marine, and his mom, dad, and sister were the ones actually running the range. So we met another Gold Star family right there, invited them out, and they've been a huge part of Warrior Weekend to remember, with Blue Skies since that day. And, that was basically when Blue Skies started including Gold Star families. And now they've started including families of fallen first responders as well. So we've had a couple first responder families from the Northern Kentucky, Cincinnati area. And then, Caleb Conley was just killed this past Memorial Day, and we've invited his widow and the family to come out for this next year's Warrior Weekend. So it's Yeah. So that was a heck of an event. We did some gun shooting. We did some airplane rides. We did some skydiving. And then about a week after that event, the team was jumping in to a stadium here in Northern Kentucky, and one of the jumpers lost the wind on his canopy, lost air on his canopy, and basically fell about 20 feet. He got in behind another jumper, and it just disturbed the air. And he basically ended up breaking his back real bad. And the team was tending to him. And I knew all the team members that were there because I just met them, the week before, a couple of weeks before. And I jumped over the fence at the ball field and got all their gear off the field and got it to their vehicle. And probably, I don't know, a week or two after that, one of the founding members called and said, "Hey, we want you to put in an application for the team." And I refused to. That same year, I got an invite to be honorary ground at Kentucky Speedway for the Xfinity race. Went down, had a great time. They gave me tickets for the wife and the kids. And then the University of Cincinnati was playing at Paul Brown Stadium that year because their stadium was being rebuilt. So we did every University of Cincinnati home game at Paul Brown, which is now Paycor Stadium. Right. And then they did the Marine Corps Marathon that year. They invited me out to be honorary ground for that. And then come time for the Military Bowl, which is usually last week-ish of December. And the owner of the team's like, "Get what you need for the team. You're on the team. We'll worry about this application later." So I'm in my ninth full. Actually, I just hit my 9-year mark last week with the team. So it's been a amazing opportunity. And then having the nonprofit and working with veterans and the Gold Star families, and there's a healing process that takes place when you get a bunch of veterans together, right?
Oh yeah.
Similar situations, you learn each other's struggles and what you did to overcome those struggles. But when you include the Gold Star families, those families that lost, a loved one, whether it was in training or, in combat, some of those Gold Star families tend to gravitate towards certain veterans. And I think it's because they see something in the veteran that they are missing, from their loved one passing. So there's something that happens there. It's an even greater healing than a bunch of veterans, being around each other. So I've been very, very fortunate for the past, 11 years, 10 years, to be part of the Blue Skies family, to be part of Team Fast Tracks, and to have, a positive impact on so many people. And
I think a lot of us veterans also appreciate those Gold Star families, because a lot of us veterans, whenever we've been deployed or overseas somewhere, or just in a different area that we don't have family, those are the same exact families that bring us in.
Yeah.
Like you're calling them mom and dad, like right off the bat.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that tend to kind of come back and want to be around us. And I have no problem going up to a mom and, saying thanks for being a mom and giving her a hug. And, she went through stuff, whatever as well, or whether it be a widow or whatever it may be, they're obviously still trying to seek that connection. And I cannot thank all the ones that have been in my life that were not blood related, but they took me into their family. Willis and I always joke about being a mother from another brother, brother from another mother, sister from another mister, you know what I mean?
Right.
So just to be accepted into family, and then the fact that you all are turning it back around and you're bringing them back in the fold, and so that they're not left alone going, now I've lost this extended family as well. It's pretty awesome.
I tell you, we need to hook Sam up with Alex Newer. Do you know Alex Newer?
I do, yeah. So he did a lot of work with the Woody Williams Foundation.
Yes.
So I've met Alex quite a few times. I've actually been very fortunate to spend a lot of time with Woody before his passing, and I know Woody's grandson Brent very well. We probably talk every week.
Nice.
I've met Alex and talked to Alex, quite a few times in passing and stuff.
Alex is a really good guy, man. We had him on our podcast early on before we started doing videos, which I met him through one of the organizations I was working. I was on the board of one of the organizations, and he come on as a treasurer. Now he was still doing his stuff with the Woody Williams Foundation, and then he came on as our treasurer right as I was transitioning out of that organization. He was coming on board, and we've just stayed in contact ever since. And he's one of those guys, man, that you meet and you're like, okay, I see why he's doing what he's doing, how passionate he is helping the Gold Star families, because I think that's what he's mainly focusing on now. I think it's, and then plus he's running his own little business now called the Tap Tavern Truck. Have you seen that?
I've not. No.
It's cool as hell.
It's cool. So he's got an old Ford. It's like a 1943 Ford pickup truck. And on the back of it, he built a custom refrigerator that has 6 taps on it. On the outside, beer kegs or whatever, you can tap whatever, and people can hire his truck. Now he don't provide the alcohol or anything like that, but you hire the truck and bring it to your event, and he puts your own logos and stuff on it. It's pretty neat, man. He got to go. He was at Louder Than Life. He's done a couple U of L games. And it's pretty neat. I'm excited to see where this little venture is going to take him and his wife and kiddos, and just his continued service to help veterans. And most people, we've said it numerous times, where veterans have servant hearts. That's the reason why most of us chose to join the military, is because we have a servant heart. And then when we get out, a lot of veterans not really lose focus in that, but it's kind of subsided because, they're dealing with this issue or they're dealing with this issue. And for me, I continue to serve because it helps me, for one. If I'm out, demoing a house for a homeless veteran, because Operation Victory here in Louisville, what they do is they'll find an old dilapidated home and they will demo it, rebuild it, and give it to a homeless veteran. And then whether that's that or out taking sandwiches to homeless veterans, or just, getting to know people. Me and another coworker, we were driving and I saw a vet on the side of the road. His name was George, Army veteran. He was sitting on the side of the road panhandling. So I pulled over to the side of the road and I stopped and talked to him. And he was hungry. I was like, all right, let's go get something to eat. So me and the other guy I was working with, who's a National Guard veteran, took him up to Golden Corral up in Louisville, and we sat there I think we sat there for 2 hours and chit-chatting with him, getting to know this guy's story, and took him back to where he was at, because he was living at St. Vincent de Paul at the time, which was one of the homeless shelters. Now his story is he came in to visit family down in southern Kentucky. I forget exactly where. Was staying there with them, and he was on his way back to Missouri or somewhere at the VA home where he was living at. And when he got into Louisville at the Greyhound station, he got mugged, and he got mugged. He went to the hospital. He got out of the hospital, and as soon as he got out of the hospital, he got mugged again. And they readmitted him to the VA hospital, and he was stuck here because they took everything. He took his ID, all the money that he had on him, took everything from the guy. And, he was down on his luck. So he was at St. Vincent de Paul, and I was doing the stuff with the organization I was with, and we try to help him as much as we could. But the organization wasn't geared to that. So that's where it fell back on me to try to find an avenue to help him get what he needed. Well, he wanted to stay in Kentucky, but his VA paperwork and everything was out in Missouri or wherever. And so he was trying to find housing here. So we were doing everything that we could. He did eventually find, get an apartment here locally in Louisville. And I saw him a few times since then. He's got a job at, I think, at a Walmart close by, doing like a greeter or something like that. So, I mean, he's doing all right now. And I was excited to see that. And that's why I do what I do, man, because it helps me. The night terrors that I got from my service, which I know you got as well. Just the stuff that I deal with on a daily basis. If I didn't help people, I think I'd be worse off than I am now. So that's kind of the reason why we do this podcast, is because we want people to know about 501c3s throughout the nation, not just locally to Kentucky, throughout the nation, because there's a lot of organizations out there that I hate to use the word mom and pop, but they're not national brands like
they're grassroots.
Right, the grassroots ones, and that's the ones that's actually out there that's actually helping the veteran. They've not got too big for their britches, as Megan usually says. They're the ones that are out there actually helping. I've mentioned this project many times, the Hope Project down in Florida. He's a retired chaplain, David Trochton. He rescues horses, and then in turns, he does equine therapy for veterans and their families down there. And he's a small organization, but after our podcast, we found out that he opened up 2 more locations. And I'm like, man, that's amazing that his word is getting out there. And I want to say we kind of helped spearhead that, but I'd be shitting myself if I did. So, but it's just awesome that he, the word's out there and he's actually growing, and he's actually putting forth helping veterans where some organizations look at you or I or Megan as just a number, just so they get funding.
Yeah. But it's like I look at Willis, I look at you, and then I look at somebody like Alex. Like how I met Alex was actually I was invited to speak at a symposium about what it's like to deal with a brain injury, because I've also had 2 strokes. So a lot of people don't realize that as well. Nothing like having 2 strokes in your 30s, that shouldn't be happening, right? So I was out there to speak, and he was doing some type of physical rehabilitation at the time. And he was like, whoa, this is not okay. We need to talk. So he approached me after I had like my little talk or whatever, and he didn't have to do that, so it that's the other thing that I like doing with this podcast is creating a community that for people like you and people like Alex and people like David Trochton, people like Rocco, people like Roe, where I was just out in Tempe, Arizona. He left one of those big organizations and he's now doing a more local type thing, and he's crushing it. So shout out to Roe Gonzalez out there doing what he's doing with Veteran Valor's community of Arizona. But that's what we want to do with this podcast. It's kind of just like, hey, there's a lot out there, and you don't always have to go with the big name brands. So.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And, and all the nonprofits that I've worked with, except for maybe 2 since I retired, they've all been grassroots. They've not had any big name backing them, no big celebrity spokesperson or anything like that. Now, Blue Skies brings in guys and girls from all over the nation. Kentucky Wounded Heroes, for the most part, it's strictly if you live in Kentucky. There's been a few exceptions that they've brought in onesies and twosies from surrounding states or other states, depending on their situation. But yeah, for the most part, that's Kentucky. And then like Walleye is they bring, and you can be from anywhere. You just have to get there. The one Patriot Hill Adventures, it's up to you. Actually, that's a word of mouth thing. So I was recommended by somebody else, and then they requested my bio, sent them my full bio, and then
the Cliff Notes.
Yeah, not the Cliff Notes. And then they got back to me and let me know, hey, you were accepted. There's another one that's basically a word of mouth only. I was able to take a group of guys up this year with me, and we did shark fishing in New Jersey.
That'd be cool.
And that one you have to go. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. We actually didn't get out on big water this year just because the weather was crazy. Yeah. So we fished in the Delaware Bay.
Yeah.
But and then I took another group of guys tuna fishing up there for some yellowfin this year, and we only caught one. And I think that one was a little slow because it ran directly towards the boat. It took 8 minutes to reel it in. I was up there last year, and my quickest was 25 minutes, and that's only because he got tail wrapped, and I brought him in backwards. And then my next one after that was like almost an hour.
Phew.
Those little torpedoes wear you out. And then, of course, we didn't hear the end of it. And I still don't hear the end of it from the guy that caught it. Oh, it only took this long. I'm like, bro, seriously, I need to take
That's
you
like
back.
just recently I went bow fishing and I could not hit the big fat fucking carpfish to save my life. But I got 2 or 3 of the needlefish, like the little eel like things. Gar.
The alligator
Gar.
Yeah.
So they're this thin.
Sniping them, she was.
Just boom, boom, hitting them, no problem. But the big fat motherfuckers, that are also a hell of a lot slower.
She couldn't hit them.
I couldn't hit them. Like I literally could not hit the broadside of a barn. But
that takes that's a lot of skill there.
But the little knot in the wood of the broadside of the barn, apparently I can hit it.
Right. But yeah, back to your point, we do. No matter how long you serve, whether it's your 4 years or 40 or whatever, you from day one you're told what to do, how to do it, where to do it, who, what, where, when, why. It don't matter. Even the commandant of the Marine Corps still has to answer to somebody, right?
Yep.
Secretary of Defense still has to answer to somebody. So when you get out, you do lose some sense of direction and some sense of purpose. And I got out and I drew unemployment for, I don't know, 2 months, 3 months maybe. And then I'm like, I need a job. I got to do something. This sitting at home stuff is for the birds. So I took a security job that the company caters to the Fortune 500 companies. And I was working for a big name company. And I think it was the 4th of July I was working. Rolled over into the 5th, and I got written up for giving a guy a threatening look. What? No words were spoken, just a threatening look. And I called my wife. I'm like, do I need this job? And she's like, not really. I was like, okay, I'm coming home. So I quit my job on my son's birthday and then got involved with a couple nonprofits and spoke nationally and did some things and raised a lot of money for them. And, and a lot of it was about telling my life events with post-traumatic stress, traumatic brain injury, and then, what can we do to lower the veteran suicide rate, and it's lower now than it was back in 2013, 2014, it was 20 plus a day. And I think last year was in 2022, it was down to around 17, but that's still way too many, right?
Yeah. Too many.
So what's going on? Is it the post-traumatic stress or is it the TBI? Is it the traumatic brain injury that is affecting your cognitive functions or your ability to not logically think properly, if that makes sense? Right.
Yeah, so, it's like the movie that studied football players that had
for sure.
Yeah,
well, and they developed the NFL, the NCAA, and NASCAR all developed their concussion protocol off of the Iraq and Afghanistan veterans.
Nice.
So, I feel like they're implementing it better than our own VA is. That's personal opinion, but I just feel like with somebody with a TBI and like I said, I've had 2 strokes now. Thankfully, my service dog he wasn't even trained for it, but he's really good at alerting to, hey, this isn't your typical migraine. This is your, oh shit, you better get in the fucking hospital right now migraine.
Yeah.
Thank God for him. But I just feel like, but when I talk to the VA about it, they're like, yeah. So it took me going to a civilian doctor finally for somebody to hear me straight out. So
unfortunately and fortunately, I've other than my rating, right? So I've had to date 43 surgeries and procedures. I can't tell you how many hospital stays I've had. It's probably double that, maybe close to triple that. And all but probably 7 or 8 of those surgeries, procedures, I was knocked either completely out or extremely heavily sedated. And I'm still only at 90%. And the VA keeps denying stuff. So other than the rating process, right? So I'm smart, but I am not intelligent, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
There are certain words that the doctors want to hear that are not in my everyday vocabulary, right? If the doctors don't hear that certain word, they don't write it down on their little piece of paper or in the computer. Then when it goes to the rater, who is usually a civilian that sits in an office way off site, so for us, it's Louisville, right? So the rater for us is in Louisville. If that rater doesn't see specific words, they're like, oh, they're only 10% here.
Or they don't check a box because they had the right verbiage in the paperwork for me, and my rating just got reduced because they didn't check a box.
Yep. Or they group post-traumatic stress and TBI, which is two different diagnoses. Yes, some of the symptoms can overlap, but not all of them. Right. So they took in with me, it now says post-traumatic stress with TBI. And so I have a lawyer involved now. So this is my third time fighting this.
Me too.
I went from 70% to 80% and got Senator McConnell's office involved. And that took 2.5 years for that to come back. Yeah. And then this last time I used a VSO, but not my VSO, because the veteran service officer here is absolutely terrible. So I used one in Ohio and I got moved from 80 to 90% and then just put in another claim. And they're like, oh, no, that's not service related. I'm like, are you kidding me? So I claimed I had a disc replaced in my neck. So I claimed my neck, my back, my shoulders. And they're like, no, not at all. I'm like, I was in the infantry for 9 years. So the Alice pack, the average pack weighed this much. The helmet back then weighed this much. With optics, it weighed this much. So I did all the research. And because that paperwork did not come from my doctor, the VA's like, nah, sorry. So now I'm in the process of getting a hold of guys that I served with, especially the night that I was blown up both times, to say, oh, yes, Sam was blown up, especially my doc, the corpsman that was out there, to say, oh, he had more life-threatening injuries to look at than me trying to figure out what was going on with his neck or his back.
Right.
I was bleeding out of everywhere, and luckily we were only, 200, 300 yards from Abu Ghraib prison and was able to get medevac right back into Bravo Surge. But yeah, so that process.
Like it also blows my mind. Like, for example, Social Security has deemed me unemployable.
Oh, same.
But yet the VA is like, nah.
Yep. So I ended up having to go in front of a judge for my Social Security. And
I did. Yeah, I did too.
Of course, they got the voc rehab person sitting in there, and the voc rehab person says, "There's nothing for infantry guys out here. There's nothing for a V-22 mechanic out here." Other than light clerical work, but the amount of time that Mr. Deeds needs to go to the bathroom or needs off because of procedures, there's nothing he can do. Absolutely nothing he can do. And the judge right there and then says, I don't know why this came all the way to me. This should have been approved forever ago.
Right. That's exactly what my judge said. Like,
but the VA, the VA's like, oh, no, you're healthy. You can work. Really? Yes, I do work. I work for a professional skydive team. I don't jump. I stay on the ground. And I sit or stand around, for the most part, I think over the next 3 weeks, I have 2 events that I'm going to be at over the next 3 weeks. Right. Or you look back in June, I didn't work at all in June. I didn't work in all of August.
Yeah.
So it's a seasonal job. It's not like a 9 to 5.
Yeah. But it's like, even like my volunteer work that I do, first off, I can say no, even the day of.
Yep.
And I'll tell you what's been the most taxing is this asshole sitting next to me fucking calling me out every fucking Sunday saying, come on, we got to do this recording. Now, it is a struggle for me though sometimes. Some days I'm like, and like, that's why like Willis even texted me earlier. He's like, you coming?
I was like, you good?
You good? You coming?
I got to make sure she's all right. I mean, I could do it myself, but I like having her here.
Yeah. No, but again, it's a real thing. That's like, I never know when a migraine's going to strike. I never know when my anxiety is going to hit. Like, there are times where it's like, I literally go to grab the doorknob and I'm like, nope, I can't do it. Now my service dog has helped immensely, but it's not a regular routine thing for me. And so for the VA to be like, "Oh, you're fine," I'm like, "Go fuck yourself." Like, it just sucks. It just sucks.
Yeah. So
And
I use the Cincinnati VA, and they've been for medical care, for the most part, they've been amazing. For mental care, they've been amazing. But the actual rating process, and I did have a few issues with them basically. Obviously, if you're sick, they have to tell janitorial, they have to tell the nutritionist, they have to tell everybody that you're sick, that you may be contagious. But for an orderly / janitor to come in the room and tell the guy that was beside me, "Hey, your buddy's sick, you're being moved," that's not his place.
Right.
I absolutely lost my stuff. And I wrote a complaint and filed it formally and everything. And then, I've had an issue. So back in 2007, I started developing back pains that would radiate to the front. Couldn't figure it out. They gave me steroid injection after steroid injection. And then finally, there was an intern from UNC Wilmington that was at the Naval Hospital at Camp Lejeune. She goes, "I'm going to send you for an ultrasound." And I looked at this lady. I'm like, "I assure you, I am not pregnant. But if I am, we're going to make a ton of money, right?" She's like, "That's not what I want to look at."
No, you get to start a new religion. That's what happens.
Yeah, right. So what happened is, because of those 2 blasts, I guess I had gallstones and had no clue. But because of the blasts, it basically gelled everything together and it broke those stones down. I had sludge in my gallbladder. And so they took my gallbladder, and man, that doctor there almost cut my bile ducts completely off. I was being filled with bile. I was turning extremely yellow from jaundice. It was bad. And he went in to repair it a couple of times, couldn't do it. They transferred me to UNC Chapel Hill, and the doctor over there basically filleted me like a fish and opened me up and had to separate my organs from each other because they were adhered to each other. Ouch. And he had to do what's called a Roux-en-Y hepatic chogeoduodenoscopy. Basically, they took a section of my intestine out and then tied my intestines back into my stomach. And then that piece that they took out, he tied into my bile ducts and then back into my intestines. So my anatomy is a little bit different, right? So I developed this thing called cholangitis. It was basically a severe infection of the intestines. Basically, bacteria grabs a whole of scar tissue, builds up, breaks off. I get sepsis real bad, and I'm in the hospital for 4 to 6 days, heavy antibiotics, fluids, whatever. Told this doctor, "Hey, I've got cholangitis." "Oh, only 20,000 people a year get this." I'm like, "Yeah." And from 2007 until probably 2015, 2016, I was 2 of those cases per year. And he just would not listen. The good thing about the Cincinnati VA is that a lot of their interns come from University of Cincinnati Medical Center.
Okay.
It's 1 block up or 1 block to the east from the VA. And there was a young lady there who says, "Why do you think it's this?" So she left. She was, making rounds with the doctors, and she left that doctor and came back. And I said, "This is why I think it's this." I gave her my gastroenterologist phone number. She called Dr. Leverage. He's like, "Yeah, Sam has this all the time. This is what you need to do for him." So they came back the next day, and the doctor's like, "I feel as though you have this." I'm like, "No, you don't get to talk to me." I was like, "The only person that gets to talk to me that's in this room right now is that young lady right there, because she's the only one that listened to the patient." I said, "Sometimes the patient knows what's wrong with them." I said, "You can make your educated guess all you want, but you have no clue." I said, "I deal with this every year."
At the VA in Louisville, I recently had a resident, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, somebody's finally listening." And now, of course, he's since graduated on, which sucks ass.
Yeah.
Because now I'm caught in limbo. But it's interesting you mentioned that, because I have not met a lot of people that dealt with what I dealt with. I was actually deployed. I was home on leave. And when I had a massive case of appendicitis and almost died from it. and they went in and they cut feet of intestine out.
Mm.
Like, because basically, like, you picture an animal balloon, you twist it and it blows up, and then it twists it and blows up. Well, so the reason why it wasn't discovered right away was everything then got kind of tucked behind my colon, and so they couldn't see it on the x-rays. And so thankfully, this one surgeon, who was a civilian surgeon, he goes, I'm going to give you about a 2-inch incision because I need to go in there. And I said, you know what, doc? Like, I'm miserable. Let's do it. And thank God he did, because he saved my life. So thankfully he caught it before it all burst, but he literally had to rip all of my intestines out, clean them off. There's all kinds of sepsis. And to this day, I still deal with all kinds of, issues with that. And no one fucking believes me. They're like, no, it's just appendicitis. So I was like, no. And the odd thing about my family is, so my father, his appendix actually ruptured. And I'll never forget the day that I showed up in the hospital. You could smell death. You could smell the sepsis and everything. Like, he was yellow, green, gray. My father and I are the only ones in our family lineage that have actually survived appendicitis. But because apparently our freaking intestines do these weird, flippy, fluky, stupid shit. Now, thankfully, mine was caught before it was burst. But yeah, I had literally feet of intestines. Like, just, they had to cut it off, same thing, and then reattach and all that jazz. But yeah, it's not something you hear about every day. And trying to explain that to people, they're like, oh, like,
yeah, for sure. Yeah,
'Cause
anytime I get a new doctor, they're like, I'm like, you don't have enough room in your computer. Just review what's already in your file. I'm not sitting here for an hour to talk to you about this.
Here's my thumb drive.
I've got 1,100 pages of pieces of paper, double-sided. That's my medical record, plus whatever's on the disc, whatever on the thumb drive. I'm not going to go over all this with you. You should have reviewed my file. I'm your new patient. I'm not explaining this to you.
Oh, that pisses me off more than anything. When you go to a new doctor, and then all of a sudden, like, mental health doctor, I went in, and I don't throw it out there a lot, but I'm an MST survivor, okay? And it happened while I was in the Coast Guard. And there's two of my shipmates, whatever. I'm not going to go much further into that. But I show up to this new mental health provider, and she's got Coast Guard shit placard, like, everywhere. Okay, that's fine. You're proud of your service in the Coast Guard, whatever. But then she's like, oh, I saw you were in the Coast Guard. Wasn't it fantastic?
No.
Like, literally read, like, 30 seconds of my record.
I don't think they do that.
Well, no, there are some. No, I do have to give credit. Like, right now, I've started EMDR trauma therapy, and it's rough. It's not easy, but it's been good. It's I'm in the new stages of it, so it's been triggering. It's been a lot, but like I really love my therapist, which is going to be really awkward because she asked me about this podcast, so she might listen. But like, I don't bullshit her. You know what I mean? And that's the great thing about her. Like, I have the confidence to be 100% with her, so I really appreciate it. But yeah, no, she was like, "Don't you love the Coast Guard?" And I was like, "Don't you want to go fuck yourself?" And I did. Eventually I ended up walking out. I was like, "We're not a good fit." I was like, "This isn't gonna work."
So I'm just starting my VA process.
Yay!
I've been out since, I've been out since 2004, I guess was the last time I was in, and I'm just finally doing it. And
I've known you for how many years? I've been on his ass about it.
My wife's been on me for 20 years.
Yeah.
Getting back to the VSO, I reached out to KDVA for benefits. I had a VSO for my county call me, and I was kind of explaining to her that, I wanted to get my medical records, my service record. And I was told that going through a VSO, that all I had to do was sign a power of attorney. They would get that for me. She goes, "No, we don't do that. You got to get that yourself." And I'm like, wait a minute, you're a VSO. You're supposed to help me, guide me through this process. If not do it yourself for me. She goes, no, we don't do that. So I contacted Simon Kelly, who's a VA attorney / some other stuff. And I was like, hey, man, this is what I got going on. And I swear within a week, he had my medical records, my dental records. We're working on getting my SRB. I need to reach back out to him about my SRB. And it just drives me crazy that, somebody at KDVA, Kentucky Department of Veterans Affairs, that's a VSO for my county, says, well, I can't help you with that. And I was explaining to her some of the stuff that we went through. You remember, like, all right, let's prime example, Haiti, first time we were in Haiti. The shit that we saw there, the guy with the tires burning on him.
Yeah. Yeah.
The guy with the comm wire getting drugged behind a truck. The guy coming up to the front gate with his hands cut off, blood spurting out. That shit fucking, as a 19-year-old, fresh out of the farm of Kentucky, that shit fucking weighs on you. And people don't believe me when I say that. I'm like, well, I remember being up in the turret. I had the video camera that you can rent from back then it was from the USO. And I was up in the turret and we were driving through, and I got some of that shit on fucking VHS somewhere. I got to find it. I got it somewhere. I know I still have the video.
It's okay, Blaze.
It's just, man, I tell you, some of the shit that we went through. And then when I went over and another one, when we were in Greece, what was that 2000? I believe it was. You said 2000?
Yeah.
The first time, Lance Corporal Wolf, who I just recently found out has passed away. He was driving. I was in the back of the troop carrier Humvee, and we had the troop strap up, and there was a creek that we went down in, and I was sitting in the back, and there was I forget who the other one was on the other side of me, but he hit that creek so fast that when we hit, we bounced, and the two in the very back we fell out. And I'm still trying to track down people for that because I know I'm going to need a buddy letter because my memory is not like what it used to be. And hell, I was knocked out for a good 2 minutes laying on the ground in the fucking creek with, my head gashed open. And so I know I got to find somebody who was there during that time. And, it's just the VA process. They make it so hard for us as veterans to navigate. And they do it for a reason because they don't want to say, well, his military service caused this or her military service. And that's bullshit, man. Honestly, that if we serve our country and we say, hey, this happened during this time in our life, then we should be fixed. It should be fixed. Like you're struggling to get 100%. She's struggling to get back to 90 to 100%. And there's other veterans out there. I'm going to put it this way, because I've seen some veterans out there that had a cushion job. They were set at a desk and they're 100%. Tell me how in the fuck somebody who was in a combat role is not 100% from their military service. It's not like, the person that's sitting behind the desk was walking 25 miles with a 100-pound rucksack on their back, and you remember the days with Gunner Wright leading our fucking force marches. I was trying to explain to Megan about Gunner Wright, and
was he the tall guy?
Yes. Yeah. Like 7 foot tall.
And he seemed 7 foot tall. And he was built like, wrong side. He was built like this.
That flag,
He was tall and lean. And that dude would run to the front gate of Camp Lejeune every day. It was like 6+ miles. He runs it every day. I'm like, and then he'd come PT with us. It's like, oh, this dude's not right.
Yeah. And I was trying to explain, like, Gunner Wright in normal conversation would stutter.
Oh, for sure.
But if you pissed him off, there was no stutter once you pissed him off.
None.
Boom. Boom. Boom.
But he was an amazing guy. I mean, behind all the male bravado that he had and stuff like that, the dude was smart as hell. He knew his shit. And if you didn't listen to him, that's where you fucked up, because he would actually teach you what you needed to know to survive. And
about every weapon system.
Yeah, every.
Yeah, I caught it from him a couple times because I didn't listen.
Oh man!
But it's like we were talking about the VA. Like my buddy who took his life recently. He lost his fight with the demons. A lot of it was from Bosnia.
Yeah.
And people just think like, oh, that was a peacekeeping mission. No. Like the shit that he saw, like there were plenty of times where I stayed up late at night with him, you know, listening to whatever he had to say or whatever. Like the shit that he told me, like I'm not gonna even repeat because it's too foul, you know? And that's what ate him up. Now, meanwhile, he also went to Iraq, and you know, he did go Middle East and do stuff like that. But what really fucked him up is Bosnia.
Yeah.
And like the VA is like, oh, that was a peacekeeping mission. You're fine.
Well, and that's, you know, and when we were in Haiti in '99, we didn't even get the humanitarian medal. We were there for the support element for the humanitarian effort, right? Yeah. So we saw some things down there that no human being should ever see.
Yeah. That's like was it when we came back from Puerto Rico? Was it we were on the boat coming back from either going to Puerto Rico or back from Puerto Rico when we rescued the people that were drowning? Do you remember that?
Yeah, that was you guys' mission. That wasn't second platoon. We didn't get to do that.
So, but the whole boat got a Coast Guard. Supposedly, the whole boat got.
Oh, we did. We got the Coast Guard Special Operations ribbon, and then it was because of that mission, and then a lot of the coasties not being qualified on weapon systems, and some of us having to go and man in guns on some of the boat raids.
Yeah. So that
that's one of the reasons I was able to get my conditional release from the Army to the Coast Guard.
Why is that?
Because I was more qualified than most people in the Coast Guard. 100%. So like I went right from being an MP, military police, to port security, and then eventually they transitioned from port security to maritime enforcement. But I was already more highly trained than most of those in that rate.
Yeah.
And so it was like I came in and since I was already an NCO at the time, I was a corporal and then moved into petty officer. They're like, well, you can just come in and start teaching. I was like, okay. Get me the fuck out of the Army. Because here's the thing is, like, when I did corrections, that's what happened. That's when I got my conditional release. I was down in Guantanamo. And God bless anybody that can do corrections, but that is not my jam. It is. I was trained as a combat support MP. So more infantry style, busting down doors, searching people.
We called those field MPs in the Marine Corps.
Yeah. Yep. So that's what I was. I wasn't garrison, even though civilian-wise I was, a civilian police officer. I was like, okay, this is awesome. I got this on the civilian side. And on the military side, I got to go fucking do some hard charging badass. And then also as a female, I was unique because whenever we did a house clearing, then they could shuffle them back towards me or anything like that. So,
we got sent to Iraq early to help facilitate the first election, and our K9 handler that they sent out was a female. I mean, Marine Corps infantry units back in 2005 didn't have females, right?
Yeah.
So, in order to handle the females in Iraq, we had to have a female attached to us. So we had some female MPs that ended up getting attached to us for the election, and then for some other things that we did just to be able to handle the female aspect of it. But yeah, it's
and to clarify to anybody that I don't want anybody to think that I'm not saying I was fortunate enough I did not actually have to go to Iraq or Afghanistan, but that's what I trained for. And then I got plucked so I was literally got my orders to go to Iraq. And then they're like, at the last minute, they plucked me and put me with the unit out of Pennsylvania to go to Guantanamo, which fuck that shit.
What year was that?
2004, 2005.
So right in the heat of getting.
Oh, it was right in the heat of it. So I remember there was this one corporal who was out of 10th Mountain. He got out of active duty, went reserves, and interesting thing about our unit, we were a unit made of 22 different units.
Man,
it was horrible. It was horrible. So like I had like 4 or 5 people that I knew. I think everybody knew like 4 or 5 people.
Well, they did that probably for.
Well, it's just the way that everyone was so spread thin.
Yeah.
So like my unit was already, because when I graduated, my unit was already deployed. So I did a whole bunch of ADSW work, doing active duty for special work, basically doing weapons maintenance and Humvee maintenance to make sure that the unit's ready for when they come back, or if we had to ship replacements. So like I'll never forget, like the mechanic was the NCOIC of the unit, and he's looking at a Mark 19 and he's like, I don't know what to do. And he said, we have to do a functions check before we ship it out. I was like, all right, I got it. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, no. So I ended up going down to Guantanamo, and if you're an MP and you get that corrections identifier, that's all you're ever gonna do.
Yeah.
So I met a Coast Guard unit down there, and that's how I found out about port security. But yeah, God bless anybody that does corrections. But yeah, no, I didn't. Thankfully, I didn't have to go to Iraq or Afghanistan. But Guantanamo, it was a lot. And that's the other thing that people don't understand. You know, they do not understand what we went through being down there. It was.
Guantanamo was not fun for anybody that was stationed there ever. I don't think I've ever heard a good story from anybody coming back from Gitmo ever. It's just crazy. So Sam, you've done quite a bit in your journey since the military. And you're still very active now. Like reading your bio, you've been to Grand Marshal of several different NASCAR races and stuff like that, dude. I'm super excited to reconnect with you. It's just we lost connection back then, and hopefully we'll stay connected now for sure. Because, like I said at the beginning of the show, you were always one of my closest friends during the military time. So I'm definitely going to pick your brain on this whole VA thing, because starting the journey now is kind of scary. I'm glad I'm doing it. And I got Megan to fall back on too. And so I'm definitely going to pick your brain. I'm going to pick her brain. And hopefully I can try to navigate this. And we'll probably talk about it more on the podcast as we go along. We got some crazy things coming down the pipe with some of the guys that were involved with like MARSOC 3. You know who you know what that story is, right? MARSOC 3. So in Iraq, there were 3 Marine Raiders. I forget what year it was, maybe 2019, maybe, because he said he's been dealing with it 4.5 years. Anyway, so MARSOC 3, you can Google it. They don't want like being called to MARSOC 3. Unfortunately, that's kind of a derogatory term for them now. But there's 3 Marine Raiders. One's a Navy corpsman. 2 were gunnies in the Marine Corps. They were at a bar in Iraq on New Year's, and combat veteran, Green Beret, civilian contractor now, was upset that he had to get out of his berthing area when the Raiders got there. Started some stuff on base with the 2 Raiders. And then later on in town that night, or like a couple days later, started running his mouth. He was drunk, running his mouth. Bouncers came in, made him leave. Well, when the Raiders left, he was still on the street running his mouth. Well, he pushed one of the Raiders. The other Raider came over, punched him, knocked him out with one punch. His civilian buddies left him. So the Raiders, doing the right thing, picked him up, took him to base, put him in courtesy overwatch so he didn't vomit and die on his own vomit while he was knocked out. Well, he wound up dying the next morning, and they got charged with dereliction of duty and homicide and all kinds of crazy shit. So they've been fighting a legal battle, and so their charges have been dropped. They're getting forced out of the military. I think November, they'll be honorably discharged in November. These guys, 22 plus years in the military. So we're going to have Gunny Dreyer on, Danny Dreyer, Gunny. We're going to have him on. He's going to tell his story. Now, he started the Brothers in Arms Foundation. He's also part owner of Crux Distillery now. Now, he still in the military. He reports to, I think he said he reports on base, but he doesn't really report to anybody. So he's like, dude, what do I do now that I'm being transitioned out of the military? I don't have a purpose. And a lot of veterans, when we transition, especially career, 20 years in or 15 years, your plan was to do 20 years. You lose that sense of purpose
For sure.
when you get out. And
Yeah, I did 9.5.
Yeah.
I was like right on that path. Like, I got this.
So even like in my situation, I got out first time August of 01. That was 4 years, 2 months. I had 30 days terminal leave. 9/11 happened. I told my mom, I said, I'm going back. I was infantry. I was like, I'm going back. Sure enough, I got a Western Union. Please report back to Camp Lejeune for combat refresher training. And it was the first time the Marine Corps ever activated the individual ready reserves.
Yeah.
And I need to find that placard. After we got out the last time, they sent a thing. It's a piece of paper like this, like parchment, and it says, "Thank you for your service. You were part of the first time the Marine Corps ever activated the IRR." And then it said, "Your name is now etched on a plank on Davy Jones's locker." I have that somewhere. I don't know exactly where it is. It's in one of my little storage areas. But I thought that was pretty neat. And, my story, I don't talk about my story to a lot, just because, Meg, you said it earlier, a lot of people don't understand. And my wife, I love her to death, but she finds out bits and pieces here and there when I'm talking to other veterans, because she wouldn't understand the shit that we went through, unfortunately. So that's why, I keep what I did mainly under wraps a lot of the times. But talking about it helps. I do understand that. And it's just crazy, man. I tell you,
I held it inside for a long time. My wife moved back to Kentucky in 2009, and I wasn't medically retired until September. Well, I guess October 1 was my official retirement day of 11. So I lived with a buddy of mine for a couple of years. He's actually my oldest son's godfather. And we had a deal where we'd go to a different NASCAR race every year. And we were on our way to Richmond one year, and there was just something that was eating me up. And I told him, I was like, listen, I'm going to tell you some stuff. I don't want to be fixed. I don't need you to understand. I just need you to listen.
Yeah.
So he's a master gunny. He's actually getting ready to take over a unit at Cherry Point as one of the senior enlisted guys there. But he was a 46 mechanic that became a V-22 mechanic. And, being an infantry guy, he didn't understand. He knew what the infantry did, but, you don't fully understand what they do. And I unloaded some stuff onto this guy, and he looked at me like I had 10 eyeballs and a penis growing out of my forehead. I said, listen, I just need to get it out. And, he's my very best friend. And, dude, I could call him right now. Granted, he's on the East Coast or the West Coast, so he's 3 hours behind us, but he'd answer his call, and because he knows the struggles I've been through. He's been at doctor's appointments with me. I've got there's a titanium rod that was in my leg that is now right there.
Oh man.
But him and his brother was a Marine too, combat engineer. His brother was injured, I think in 2009 or 10. And being around me and knowing what I went through, it helped him prepare for his brother. Now, granted, it's his brother. It's going to be a long emotional ride. But his brother and him thought it was going to be smart to take that titanium rod that used to be in my leg, and it's on a C4 box. So it says, it says 3 charge demolition shaped 15 pounds. That's the plaque is the friggin' front of the C4 box that they, put some stain over, and then they threw that titanium rod thinking they're funny because I got blown up a couple of times, right?
Mm.
So, but yeah, it hangs proudly in my office, but I will now, and it took me a long time because, being at Barrett-Jackson and being on the main stage at the first ever nationally televised Barrett-Jackson, and having, the president of the foundation that I was representing at the time up there telling my story. And you got Jeff Gordon sitting in the, second row. You got Rick Hendricks sitting in the front row. You got all these other extremely wealthy, influential people that are there and also listening on TV, right? So, or on the web, like, many people are here today. But it's very humbling. If you go back and watch that Barrett Jackson clip, I'm on the stage crying like a friggin' baby. But, they're talking about my struggles with post-traumatic stress and me almost killing my son, who is now 17. And if it wouldn't have been for my dog that was not trained biting my arm, I wouldn't be here talking to you today. I'd probably still be in jail, but my son would be dead, So
Blaze literally just came up and started licking on me, funny enough, as you're talking.
Yeah, I see him in below the title there.
Yeah.
But, and then, doing some other things nationally. And, Ron White's Comedy Salute to the Troops, when it's my wife and I talking about my struggles with post-traumatic stress, talking about my struggles with traumatic brain injury. And then, speaking at the Ripon Society breakfast on 9/11 in DC, and having all these senators and congressmen, listening to me talk about my life events. It's hard. The easiest thing that you should be able to talk about is yourself, but it is the absolute hardest thing to talk about, especially when it paints you in a light other than what people see you.
Yeah.
So over the past few years, I've been very open about my struggles with post-traumatic stress. I've been very open about my struggles with traumatic brain injury. And my Facebook is public. I don't hide anything from anybody. About once a year, twice a year, depending on how I'm feeling, I post. It's a huge, long post about post-traumatic growth. And it's, overcoming the adversities that puts you in the funk, right? And there's 5 different steps to the growth that was UNC Charlotte did the study in conjunction with Ken Falk, and they've developed this post-traumatic growth stuff. And I don't know if I have the book here or not, but it's called Struggle Well. And it's a good book to read, but the podcast is, or I said the podcast, the audio book is better. And there's a few other books that, David Goggins, his Can't Hurt Me. The audio for that book is phenomenal because he has somebody else reading the book, and then that guy will stop and be like, all right, David, tell me about this. And then you get to hear from Goggins himself why that is in the book or the impact that event had on his life. And it's just so well done that stuff like that has helped me. And then obviously being able to open up and tell my life events of, where I come from, small town, rural Maine, maybe 80 people graduating class from 9 different towns, right?
Yeah.
To where I am now. And, being able to still lead, being able to still mentor, being able to still train. But the other piece of that is to be able to inspire people, right? So I am nowhere, in no way, shape, or form, a motivational speaker. I mean, there are 100, 200, 300, 400 guys, girls that look just like me that have a similar story as me. But I guess I'm one of few that are, will open their mouths and say something.
Right.
But, and I've been saying it a long time. You lose your sense of purpose. You lose your sense of direction, especially as a gunnery sergeant. You're for 14 plus years, I lead, trained, mentored people. And then all of a sudden that comes to an end. I had a week and a half from the time my paperwork came back to the time my retirement happened. So my stuff was quick, like really quick. There was no end of tour award. There was I had to fight to get my last fitness report from the unit. Crazy. And they're like, oh no, you've only been here. I was like, I've been in this unit for 5 years. How about you research who your Marines are? And I was a gunny. I was an E7, And, so for these guys that are the E2s, E3s, E4s that are getting pushed to the wayside, that you have nothing, you don't know anything. I mean, even when I got out, I knew nothing. And I'm still today, what is this? Coming up on 13 years, 12 years later, retiring, still learning about the VA system and the process and what you need and what you don't need. And I learned something new yesterday at a doctor's appointment. So you absolutely, Willis, positively need the buddy letter.
Yeah, I know I will. And
No, because that is going to hold just as much weight as your medical record's going to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there's nothing in the medical records because our corpsman at the time was like, hey, because Wolf's dad was
Colonel.
Was he a colonel at the time? I think he retired as a 1-star, maybe, I think. Yeah. He's like, you can't say anything because I'll get in trouble with my dad. So we kind of swept it underneath the rug, and which happened quite a bit in the military.
Yeah, but so the things that your medical record does not say, the eyewitness statement. So I can't remember what VA form it is, but if they don't fill out that VA form and they actually do a certified written statement or type statement that says, I certify that this statement is true to the best of my ability and knowledge, blah, 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 blah. Signature, right? That eyewitness statement is going to hold just as much weight as anybody's medical record is. Okay. So I have to go back to my corpsman and go back to the at least 2 of the guys that were with me the night that I got blown up and flown 20 plus feet from the IED.
Right.
Just to, have that there, because obviously with it coming from me, I have no idea what happened in my own personal life. So I have to get other people to certify that actually happened in my life, because I refuse to go to medical, which, it is.
Yeah. I mean, we were told back then, though, if don't report anything unless it's something very major.
Oh, yeah.
And that's coming down from chain of command. They're like, don't go to BAS unless you have to go.
Yep.
And it's just like, that's like my kidney stones that I got when I was in, they're like, I spent 7 days in the hospital because of the kidney stones. And granted, I can't say that they were service related because I've only had it happen one other time since I've been out, 20 plus years. And it's just like, man, I wish I knew now back then.
Yeah.
That way I could have said, hey, let's get this in my records. And I'm a very strong advocate for that now. Like anybody that I meet that's still in the military, like my nephew, he's been in the National Guard for I think 7 years. Just recently went active duty. He's down in Fort Campbell right now. And I'm like, dude, anything that happens to you while you're on active duty, report that shit.
Yep. LOD, line of duty.
You have to report that, because when you get out, if something in the future affects you because of that, it's in your records, and and you'll have a better chance of proving it. I'm like I said, I'm a very strong advocate of telling guys, hey, don't worry about that stigma of being sidelined because you got hurt on while you were training. It's like I ran into somebody the other day. He was at Fort Knox doing some training, and he got comm wire, not comm wire, but concertina wire was wrapped around his leg, and he tripped and it gashed him wide open. I was like, dude, report that shit. Make sure it's in your record. That way, when you get out, if you have any muscle issues in your legs, I mean, it gashed him open really, really good, and he's got stitches and everything. And I'm like, report that shit. Make sure it's in your record book, your medical history. So
yeah, it's nuts. So like when I was with a unit up in Massachusetts, I was doing my 2 weeks active duty, and I woke up to a tick on me.
Yeah.
And had the bullseye, all that. And I was like, I want this in my record. And you know what's funny? It's not funny at all. Do you know to this day, I still have not been given a Lyme test?
That's crazy.
But like literally, I had them in like They even drew like a picture and all that jazz. They removed it. They immediately put me on like steroids and antibiotics and stuff like that. So, but again, years later, I now also have a brain injury, but also there is a good chance, especially being in Massachusetts, like, is there any like complications of Lyme? You know, is that one of the reasons I'm tired all the time, or is it my brain injury? Why don't you just test me?
Yeah.
And I can't even get a test.
That's because they don't want to say that that's the reason why.
Yeah, because I was smart and I have my paperwork, because then they'd have to own it.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
I tell everybody too, you know, they're gonna tell you you're a sick bay commando, but at the end of the day, it's your life, it's your career, and you won't have to fight as hard as I'm fighting right now with the VA because your stuff will be documented.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I do have some sworn eyewitness statements because they tried to get one of my awards upgraded. And then the command said, nah, we're not going to do that. So I do have eyewitness statements that are sworn from that night, the original ones still that I'll be turning in, plus the buddy letters just to see if, you know, the VA decides they want to improve my rating or keep me where I'm at. I really don't want to do the individual unemployability. I don't want to do the total and permanent. You know, yeah, it's great to be paid at 100%, but the benefits that come with being 100% slowly outweigh, you know, being total and permanent and being paid at 100% for sure.
Right. Yeah, because I think at 100%, your kids can get that medical, and there's all kinds of good benefits.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't want to say good benefits, but there's a lot of benefits at being 100% rated and not the others. So
yeah, for sure.
And me, all right, I felt for many years, and I've told Megan this on time, that there's other veterans out there that rate it more than I do. And I know that's a bad thing, the way to look at it, but that's the way I was, because, you know, here I am. I got out of the Marine Corps 2004, and I'm living what I thought at the time was a normal life. I had a good job. I had a girlfriend. We started a family, got kids. And then I got to, you know, working with veterans and hearing stories and dealing with my own demons at the time. Now it's like, well, why did I wait so long? You know, because my memory, like I said, is not as good as it used to be. Like, I couldn't remember people's, like, I knew who you were. I don't like, and I think I've looked you up a few times in the past and never reached out to connect. And I don't know why, because I guess I'm stupid or whatever. But like Wolf's name, I couldn't tell you what his first name. I knew he was a Lance Corporal. I knew his last name. I knew his dad was a high-ranking Marine Corps officer, but I couldn't tell you what his first name was. I knew it, but I couldn't tell you. And there was guys that from 1-8 that, or not 1-8, 2-8, that I couldn't even remember them being in my platoon. You know, and I'm like, what the hell? And I don't know if that stems from the undiagnosed TBI that I got in Greece in 2000, possibly. But it's just like, what do I do? And thankfully, I'm starting the process now, and I got people in my corner that's going to help me try to navigate this, and hopefully, we'll see how the journey goes, because I'm going to document it. Hell, I have a podcast. I got a platform. If my story could help one veteran, which is something we say all the time.
All the time, yeah, for sure.
One veteran at a time. That's all that matters. And if my story helps maybe streamline the VA process a little bit easier for somebody, I'm all for that. And we'll see how it all plays out. So,
well, and the VA has changed their process so many times since I retired. So when my stuff was going through, I was one of the first cases that went through the PEB, the medical separation process, where my paperwork went to the Navy and to the VA at the same time. And I got both ratings back at the same time. Now, at that time, I could have signed it, or I could have fought, either way, either the VA or the Marine Corps. But I was dealing it for 2.5 years, and I just wanted to be over with it. And that's the problem I ran into when I came home. I fought so much that at a certain point, I gave up on myself and the process. So then got involved with it back again, like a year later, 2 years later, and then back into it again. But yeah, you just, the VA is going to do whatever they can do to irritate you and to have you give up.
I think you said it so well. It's like, you have to remember that you're your own best advocate.
Yeah.
And it's exhausting.
Very.
It's exhausting. But that's where reach out to a buddy.
Yeah. Physically, mentally, it's extremely exhausting.
I've literally taken friends to their appointments because I know, even for myself, sometimes it's helpful for me to have somebody take me to my appointment, because otherwise, like I said, I go to reach that doorknob to try to leave the house, and I'm like, nope, fuck it. I don't want to deal with it. But if I've got that buddy knocking on the door, like, get your ass moving. Like, come on, we're going.
And that's kind of why I push you the way I do, because I know this podcast helps you just as much as it helps me. And I'm grateful for you being here, because for one, we bounce, we got a good connection, and if it helps you, it helps me. So that's why I push you to help you, even though sometimes it seems like I'm just being.
Oh, sometimes I want to punch him straight in the fucking ball sack. But you know what I mean?
That's just the Marine in me. Come on now.
Yeah. No, it's all good. No, I know. I appreciate it. Like, it's one of those, I go from punching you in the throat to, giving you a hug in the end. But, no. But that's what we do. But that's how us veterans work sometimes.
Yeah, it's crazy. We all have that weird, I say all, most of us have that weird, sick, twisted sense of humor type thing. That we know what buttons to push with each other, whether we're bagging on the Army or the Coasties or the Air Force or the Navy or back to the Marines again, and of course this new
Space Force,
that Star Trek stuff going on. But
you got your aluminum helmet ready,
right? But it's we
will this work?
That's it right there. Even though the mission of each branch of service is different, by the doctorate of their own branch, we're all in it for the same reasons. The end game is all the same. And, whether you were drafted back in Vietnam, you volunteered pre 9/11 or you volunteered post 9/11, the duty to serve this country is something that very, very few people have done, and many that have not truly take advantage of, and they look down the nose of those that did serve. And whether it's within the VA system, that people that didn't serve, that they think the money's coming out of their pocket, that it's going to hurt their bottom line or whatever it is, or it's the ones at corporate America that spent most of their time in school or building this major franchise. Those of us that did serve know and understand, whether you went to war or not, that you are more fulfilled doing your 4 years or 40 years than you would have been sitting in a friggin' classroom and paying your student debt back for 15, 20, 30 years. And then having to continue that education, depending on what field you're in every year, because you have to have your, follow-on training every single year. But, it's that having that sense of purpose back then, and then continuing that sense of purpose after you get out and finding, whether it's, like you said, the guy that started his own nonprofit, whether it's you starting your own or you're falling in line with something that's already established, giving back to the community that you served for so long is extremely rewarding. I mean, there's a lot of Vietnam veterans that come out with Kentucky Wounded Heroes. And there's one guy in particular, he's from Glasgow. He was a brown water Navy guy. He joined the Navy because he didn't want to be on the front line.
Yeah, my stepfather was a brown water Navy guy.
Yeah, so he
helped transport the seals and all that shit up the rivers.
So he joined the Navy because he didn't want to be, on the front lines, and then they stick in brown water, right? So and he's a 2-time Purple Heart. Man, he is so fun to be around. Loves fishing. And that's another thing,
That was my stepfather, man. He was the coolest ever. Like, doing that
my wife
Sufco brown
knows.
butter stuff. Yeah.
My wife will see me getting irritated, agitated. She goes, "You need to take a break." And my hard reset for me is out on the water fishing, whether I'm in Alaska, in Ohio, in New Jersey, or right here in a private lake in Georgetown catching a ton of crappie. Just it takes my mind off of everything. I'm concentrated on catching a fish. It doesn't have to be the biggest fish, but a fish.
Right.
And of course, if you do catch the biggest fish, the trash talk and the bragging rights that continues to go on with it. I mean, I just sent the group from Alaska today a picture and tagged one of the guys, because we teased him that he caught a short king and he kept it. So I tagged him, with his name with short king in the middle of it and sent it to him.
Nice.
But just that alone, that reset, and then just being able to impact the lives of those Vietnam veterans that were treated like trash when they came home. So, and then advocated so hard for our generations not to be treated that way. They deserve, everything that in a good way that comes to them, or that we can provide to them.
Yeah, there's been a couple times where I've seen somebody wearing the Vietnam veteran hat, like not only do I say thank you for your service, but welcome home.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they pause and they're like, ugh. And you know what? I don't really care what's going on my day at that point. If there's nothing major, like the only thing that would interrupt anything is my girls, that's like that's the hard no-go. Like I always take care of my girls. So like if it was like, cause I had to pick them up from school or something, but I just sat and talked with them.
Yeah.
And like, he was just like, what, and then it wasn't until like 20 minutes in, he's like, did you serve? I was like, well, yes, sir. But, but at the same time, I completely understand. Like, again, with even though he wasn't legally my stepfather, that's what I call him. Just hearing all the things that he dealt with. And
yeah. And they continue, that.
Yeah.
Right. That the study that was just done on suicide, the veteran population is the higher percentage.
Yep.
Right. In that. And I think a lot of it has to do with the way that they were treated by the VA, and some of them still feel that way. And
also some of them are losing their spouses that were in Iraq.
They're losing their support
because
network.
They're of the age now.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's their spouses, the guys that they served with.
Yeah.
So I mean that whole support network that they had from the time they came home until now, is for one reason or another not with them anymore, right? So
yeah, like I was with a friend and they were surprised. So the next thing I know, this Vietnam veteran is like giving me a business card. And it's not an actual business card. What it is that he served with the 113th Bravo Infantry Battalion in Vietnam. And it kind of just gives his like quick Vietnam dossier. Because he's looking for connection.
Yep.
And he doesn't want to lose connection. So now I've got his info and I just text him every now and then. Like, hey man, how you doing? Like what's going on?
Well, and a lot of the Vietnam veterans, when they actually do open up and start talking, are realizing that our generation experienced some of the things that they experienced, maybe not to the degree of what they experienced or how they experienced it, but they fought against a faceless enemy just like we did in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And they're finding common factors between Vietnam and Iraq and Afghanistan, and they are befriending us, because they understand more than probably anybody what we went through, vice, other eras where they fought against a uniform force.
Right.
And I think it's almost like a litmus test. They kind of want to hear what we have to say. And if we're going to be there for them and kind of open up, then they really want that. They do ultimately want that. Like I remember talking to one Vietnam veteran. I was wearing a Guantanamo Bay shirt. And it was, back in the day, was it MasterCard or whatever? It says, gallon of milk. Such and such yeah. So that's what it said. It said like gallon of milk cost this much. Phone call home was like $2.49 a minute. And then it said babysitting terrorists priceless. Well, I actually had, like, I was wearing the shirt. We all got them, and we got them in the detaining orange color, right? Like, we thought we were funny. Like, and especially, like, if you lived it, like, you know it. Because, like, milk was stupid expensive down in Guam. I used to joke that I ate my Cheerios with Michelob Ultra because it was cheaper. It was cheaper to buy a case of Michelob Ultra than it was a gallon of milk.
Yeah.
That's just the way that it worked out.
Yep.
But anyways, I was wearing this shirt, and I was back home in Virginia, of all places. And I literally had somebody, like, try to start a fight. And, like, she spat on me, and she said I was disgraceful and distasteful and, like, all this other shit. So, to be able to open up with that kind of, like, story sometimes to a Vietnam veteran.
Oh, yeah, they can relate directly.
Yeah. That's why I was like, listen, I will 100%. Like, anything you want to talk about, I'm here to listen. But I appreciate you and what you went through. And you also help set the guidelines and the standard of this is how we should not treat our veterans coming home.
For sure.
I didn't get a ticker tape parade when I got home. I literally came off a school bus that had holes in the floor.
Yeah.
And they're like, here's your bags and go home.
Go on your merry way. Yeah.
That was it.
I
didn't get no fucking parade. No. So.
Well, Sam, we've been on here for quite a long time. And we could probably keep on going.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, my daughters are upstairs fighting via text message at the present moment in time. So we're going to go up there and figure out what's going on there. But yeah, I could probably carry on this conversation with you probably all night long. I'm sure.
It's been awesome. Like, I just met you, and you're just so easy to talk to. And I really appreciate everything that you're doing and continuing to do.
We'll definitely have to have you back on for sure. With some more exciting fishing trips and stuff like that. And
yeah, right.
My plan is to come up to Queens Lake. I think it's October 14th. Or is it the 14th?
14th.
So I plan on coming up there for.
And I'm deathly afraid of heights, but oddly enough, I love skydiving. So even if I can't skydive, I'd love to just be a part of it and like watch it come in and something like that. I'd love to.
Yeah. So like I said, October 14th at Queens Lake. I think it's 292 Swords Road in Georgetown.
Mm-hmm. Let's see if I still have that.
Yeah, we're running the Mogadishu Mile. So it's a memorial event to commemorate the guys that were lost during the Battle of Mogadishu. So Operation Gothic Serpent, Task Force Ranger. Kentucky is the only team Mogadishu Mile event. Every other Mogadishu Mile event is individual effort. So 100% of the proceeds are going to be split between Blue Skies for the Good Guys and Gals Warrior Foundation and the Three Rangers Foundation. So it should be a good time. We have one team coming from one of the Ranger regiments. We've got a bunch of the college ROTC units coming up. Western Kentucky called, what day was that, on a late Tuesday, and said that they want to bring 2 teams or 3 teams. And we're like, bring them.
That's awesome.
So it's a good time. And like I said, the team's going to jump in, and we have a bunch of other stuff, semi-local too for the team. But yeah, it's we'd love to have you guys out for the Mogadishu Mile for sure. And if you guys want to just set up and do something there, you're more than welcome, or just come out and watch and share on the teams. But yeah, we've got.
Yeah, definitely. I want to do. I was thinking about doing a live podcast that day. I know I reached out to the owner of Queens Lake,
John.
Yeah, I think his name is John. I got that email somewhere. One of our local unions, IUE CWA, she met up with them at, I think, Kentucky at Derby, around Derby time at Churchill. And he wanted to connect with the guys that do the veterans for the local union, which I run the CWA Veterans Committee Local 3310. And then I'm also the president for AT&T Veterans for the state of Kentucky. And so I reached out to him because supposedly it's supposed to be a really nice place up there. I've never been there.
It is very nice.
And they're planning on doing some kind of big ecosystem for veterans and stuff up there. So I definitely want to check it out because I
Yeah.
think it's something neat and cool for the state of Kentucky. And it just so happens that you'll be up there that time. So might as well take a trip. Me and Megan take a trip up there and do a live that day.
Yeah, and we got to make sure that James
Thornton.
knows about it,
Yeah, definitely.
especially since he was actually on the Mogadishu.
Yeah, so James Thornton, he's part of Warrior Rounds.
Rounds.
Actually, let me rephrase that. He's not part of.
He volunteers.
He
for them
volunteers for him. So
and promotes them on his own time because he believes in them.
So plus he was part of Mogadishu Mile. So hell, might as well bring him with us.
Yeah,
I'm sure
for sure.
Because he's got the Warrior Rounds trailer that he can pull up there. We could definitely set up something up there and talk with you and talk with other people that are involved with the event. I think that'd be pretty cool. We can go live, and have a good time. We got a concert coming up October 21st. It's at 21st in Germantown here in Louisville. It's a veteran suicide awareness fundraiser. One of the local veterans, he's a Navy veteran, Rick Ames. He's with Louisville. He owns Louisville Live Entertainment, and then Talents is Chris Hawks. They're putting on an event. They got 12 bands coming in. I think it goes on from noon to midnight. $10 entry to get in. So I think it's going to be a cool event. We're going to be there for that for a little bit. And that money is going to go to Dogs Helping Heroes, which is an amazing organization.
Yep.
One of our good friends, she'll tell you that we talk about her all the time, that we love her to death.
We love Cassie.
We do. Cassie's amazing, and she does amazing things for veterans in our community.
I mean, the whole organization is great, but like we really love Cassie.
Well,
like,
she's the person. She's the face I know.
Yeah.
And I've known her the longest. And
me too.
If we can support veterans anyway, Megan and I, that's what we want to do, and that's the whole premise behind this. And we thank you for coming on here and spending, almost two hours.
Thank you.
Hours.
Yeah, this is a long one for us, but it was so easy.
Yeah, it was definitely easy.
Just felt good.
Well, it's and it's easy when Willis and I haven't talked for 20 plus years either, right? So it's a little bit different if you stay in contact with somebody that entire time, because you already know what's going on in each other's lives, right?
Yeah.
So not truly knowing, other than him stalking Facebook or whatever he was doing with me for a couple of years before he decided to hit that friend button.
But you don't know me from Adam. And,
that's it. That's it. True.
And we were able to just kind of click right in. So
well, like I said, me and Deeds clicked right away in boot camp. And
I'm sorry again.
I've got on the opposite wall. I've got both of our boot camp photos on the wall.
Nice.
So I've got the one platoon photo where everybody's in their blues all broken up, and then I've got our graduation photo on the other wall.
Nice.
Yeah.
You gotta love it.
I don't know if you've heard, but on previous podcasts, so we're so much family. My daughters, whenever we go to a restaurant, they save the red crayons
for me.
For
nice.
Willis.
Yeah. They're my favorite. You probably got a box.
No, I had a friend of mine.
Oh yeah, the challenge coin. I remember you.
So it's in one of the other rooms, but yeah, it's huge, man. It's this big, and then another friend of mine did a smaller one, pocket size. But yeah, I have two crayon challenge coins. They're both bottle openers, and they both have stuff to do with the Marine Corps. It's just it's nice. Hilarious.
Nice.
No, I just love that my girls picked up on it because like I said, I'm Army and Coast Guard, and then they were like, "What's this crayon thing?" And I'm like, Willis needs to be fed them, and when I'm doing the podcast, if he gets angry, I just give him one. And they're like, "Okay."
My wife and the boys found some of those gum crayons.
Nice.
So yeah, there's a few pictures of me floating around. It looks like I'm eating crayons, but it's actually the gum.
I heard there's an alcoholic beverage now that's Crown flavored.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
We'll have to check it out.
I saw
But anyway,
you all are too much. I love it though.
We're gonna have to stay definitely connected, man.
Sure.
Like I said, now that we've reconnected, and we're gonna hang out for sure, because we'll have you down for a barbecue or something, or hell, we might even just come up there to visit you there where you're at. But definitely thank you for coming on, spending 2 hours with you. or with us. But we'll.
It's crazy that it's been that long.
Yeah.
I just want to say that one more time. But I appreciate
it's just been easy.
It's been easy.
And it's just free flowing.
And any of the stuff that I have going on too, if you guys want to come up and be involved and do a live or just take photos or whatever, like I know Warrior Weekend is probably going to be August next year.
Just
you know,
us in the
with
loop,
the
man.
skydive team, you guys are more than welcome to come up. And I mean, it's just promoting a grassroots nonprofit organization.
That's awesome.
You know,
Yeah,
the more
that's what we
decent
love.
mile or even some of the stuff we got going on with Kentucky Wounded Heroes. I think November 4th, we're down in Bowling Green for the Resilience Ruck. So, I mean, anything like that, you guys are more than welcome. And I'll just keep you updated of what
Yeah,
where
Please
I'm
keep
going
us
to be
posted.
and what I have going on. And like I said, you guys are more welcome to come out and then just hang out, or, you know, if you guys want to do a live and talk about it, it's fine too.
And like I said,
We'll do it.
I am on full disability, Social Security wise at least, and so sometimes I'm looking for an escape. So
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons
down.
I went to Tempe, Arizona. Was like, you know what? I don't have my girls this weekend. I gotta go do some self care and just get the fuck out and spend some time with veterans and be me.
Yeah.
So that'd be awesome.
Well, we're gonna let you go, buddy.
Yeah,
It
man.
was nice talking to you. Simplify, and we're
Some
definitely
apparatus. No, I'm just kidding.
we're definitely gonna keep in touch, man. So you have a good
Yeah.
night. Tell the
Yeah, you
wife
as well.
thank you for allowing you to spend 2 hours with us, and we'll talk soon, brother.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, man. Have a
All
good
right.
night.
Have a good night.
You as well.
Man, that was so freaking cool, bro.
Isn't that fun when you get to reconnect with somebody?
Oh yeah.
And it's like, yeah, he kind of talked about how it's been a while for you all, and that's
It
why it was
has.
easy to talk
Yeah.
that long. But I feel like you all would have talked that long even if you just talked last week.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, we were boot camp buddies, battle buddies, and we just clicked right from the get go. And I haven't really talked to him in, God, 20 plus years. And it
sounded like you almost just talked maybe only a month ago. Maybe it was just a month worth
I
of
mean,
catching.
well,
But I'm just saying, in general,
Yeah.
that's how easy it was. It was awesome.
yeah, for sure. I mean, it was stupid easy. And that goes back to saying the bond that we made when we were in the military, that we just picked right up kind of where we left off. It's just the stuff that me and him went through in boot camp, stuff that we went through in 2-8, before I transferred out and he went on his way. It's stuff, like he said, that, you should never see. The stuff in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, man, I tell you what, us just talking about it doesn't do it justice, because that was, as a 19-year-old, fresh out of boot camp, fresh out of School of Infantry, you go to your first unit and you get deployed down to Haiti. Man, I tell you what, it's crazy. And to start your journey, with the military in a situation like that, it's just, it was just mind-boggling. And Sam and I, man, like I said, we were really good friends then, and hopefully we'll reconnect more and still carry on that tradition that we had back then. That's my plan, and I hope he's the same way. So
Sounds like he is.
but anyway, it's time for me and Megan to say good night. We're gonna play the outro. So like Megan and I say, always stay safe out there, and we got your six. Thanks for listening. Suggestions and comments are always welcome.
Discrimination will never be tolerated.
Cannot wait to have another great show with you all,
Don't forget, you can find us on Apple, Amazon, Spotify.
or wherever you get your favorite podcast. Stay safe out there. We got your six.